My mom texted me saying, "We're only having your sister's family this year." I typed back, "Have a good time." She had no idea I owned a $6 million estate, and I was about to throw the biggest Thanksgiving party of my life. Growing up as Hannah Dawson meant living in the shadow of perfection. My sister Melanie wasn't just the firstborn, she was the blueprint for everything our parents wanted. The golden child, their pride and joy. Me, I was the mistake they never quite figured out what to do with. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom would ask while I sketched in my notebook instead of studying for calculus. Melanie got straight A's in math, and look at her now. Dad wasn't much better. When I won second place in the state art competition, he nodded and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning the conversation to Melanie's debate team championship. Our family photos told the whole story. Melanie front and center, Mom and Dad beaming beside her. Me, always slightly off to the side, like I was photobombing my own family portraits. By high school, I accepted my place. Melanie was heading to business school while I dreamed of art college. During my college application process, Mom found my portfolio and flipped through it with pinched lips. "Art school? Really, Hannah? And how exactly will you support yourself?" That same week, they threw Melanie a lavish party for her internship at a prestigious accounting firm. I got a pat on the shoulder and a half-hearted, "Good luck with the drawing thing." I learned to smile through it all. The comparisons, the disappointment in their eyes, the way they'd introduce me as our other daughter at neighborhood barbecues. But here's the truth nobody tells you about being the lesser child. You learn to build your worth outside the family. You find strength they'll never understand. Before I continue, let me ask you this. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who should have loved you unconditionally? If you have, you'll feel this story deep in your soul. And if you know that kind of pain, hit subscribe. Not because it helps me, but because stories like this remind us that sometimes silence and strength are the best revenge. 10 years after high school, our lives couldn't have been more different. Melanie married a corporate executive named James right after college. They bought a house in the suburbs, had 2 perfect children, and took family vacations to resorts where they snapped photos for their Christmas cards. Meanwhile, I was living in a tiny studio apartment in New York, eating ramen 3 nights a week, and freelancing as a graphic designer. My apartment had water stains on the ceiling and a door that I used as a makeshift desk. But it was mine, and I'd earned every inch of it. I'd cut back on visits home to twice a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, each one more painful than the last. The conversation always followed the same script. "So, Hannah, still doing those little drawings?" Dad would ask, cutting into his turkey. "I'm a graphic designer, Dad. I create branding for companies." Mom would jump in. "Melanie's husband just got promoted to vice president. They're looking at vacation homes in the Hamptons." And Melanie would smile that perfect smile, touching her perfect pearls, before adding, "It's nothing, really. James works so hard." Last Christmas was particularly brutal. I just landed a small project I was proud of, redesigning the logo for a local coffee chain. But when I tried to share the news, Mom interrupted. "Did you hear Melanie's son made the honor roll? He's only in first grade." The conversation shifted immediately. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate while they gushed over my nephew's academic prowess. For dessert, we had Melanie's favorite, chocolate cream pie. No one remembered I was allergic to chocolate. I drove back to my apartment that night feeling hollow. Why did I keep subjecting myself to this? Why did I still crave their approval when it was clear I'd never get it? My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Wish you'd consider moving closer to home like your sister. We hardly see you anymore." I didn't respond. They hardly saw me when I was sitting right in front of them. You know what hurts the most? Not what they did, but that I still tried to make them proud after everything. If you've ever given people too many chances, you already understand this pain. Don't just scroll. Subscribe. Join people who've been through it too, because you deserve stories that make you feel seen. Life has a funny way of changing when you least expect it. For me, everything shifted because of a spilled coffee and a deadline. I was working at my makeshift desk when my ancient laptop started glitching. In my panic to save files, I knocked over my coffee cup, sending liquid straight into my keyboard. The screen went black just as I was finishing a logo I'd spent 3 days on. With a deadline in 4 hours and no computer, I rushed to the nearest coffee shop with my sketchpad. That's where I literally bumped into Caleb Rhodes. "Whoa, you okay?" he asked, steadying me as I nearly crashed into him. I wasn't. I was on the verge of tears, clutching my sketchpad like it was a life raft. "Computer died. Logo due in 4 hours. Client will drop me," I blurted out. Instead of walking away, Caleb pointed to his table where a sleek laptop sat open. "Use mine. I'm just answering emails." I stared at him, suspicious. Nobody in New York was this nice without wanting something. "Seriously," he said, "I'm Caleb. I run a small tech startup, and I know deadline panic when I see it." 4 hours later, I'd not only finished the logo, but shown Caleb my portfolio. His eyes lit up with each design I scrolled through. "Our company needs a complete rebrand," he said. "Our current logo looks like it was made in the 90s. Would you be interested?" What started as a one-time project turned into a job offer 2 weeks later. The startup, NeuroSync, was developing AI software that major tech companies were watching closely. They needed someone to build their visual identity from scratch. "We can't match corporate salaries," Caleb admitted during our meeting, "but we can offer something potentially more valuable. Equity. Company shares." My parents' voices echoed in my head. "That's not a real job. Where's the security in that?" But for the first time, someone saw value in exactly what I could do, not what I couldn't. "I'll take it," I said. Working at NeuroSync felt like finally finding my people. No one compared me to anyone else. No one dismissed my ideas. In meetings, Caleb would point to me and say, "Hannah's the visual genius behind this." I belonged, and that feeling was worth more than any paycheck. 18 months into my job at NeuroSync, everything exploded in the best possible way. It started with whispers around the office, closed-door meetings, Caleb looking both stressed and excited. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Softcore Industries has made an acquisition offer. They want our technology, our team, and our brand. The next few weeks were chaos. Legal teams moving in and out of conference rooms, numbers thrown around that seemed unreal. Through it all, I kept my head down, focusing on polishing our visual assets for the final presentation. I wasn't part of the big negotiations. I was just the designer who'd created the company logo and helped build the brand. My stake was minimal, or so I thought. Then came the morning Caleb asked me to step into his office. "You know those shares we gave you instead of a bigger salary?" he said, sliding a paper across his desk. I nodded, looking down at the document. The number at the bottom made me blink twice. "Is this right?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. $6 million, Caleb confirmed. "Your 2% stake is worth $6 million after the acquisition." The room seemed to tilt. $6 million, more money than my entire family combined had ever seen. More than Melanie with her corporate husband would make in decades. "I need to sit down," I said, already sitting. "You earned this," Caleb said. "Your designs helped get us here. Our brand identity was part of what sold them on us." That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at my ceiling water stains. Tomorrow, I'd be a millionaire. I could buy any home I wanted. I could invest, travel, never worry about money again. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Melanie just got a $5,000 bonus at work. They're using it for a pool renovation. When are you coming for Thanksgiving? Same time as usual? My finger hovered over the screen. I could tell them. Watch their faces change. See the sudden interest in my little drawings. But something stopped me. They'd never valued me before. Why give them the chance to value my money now? I typed back, "Congratulations to Melanie. Yes, same time for Thanksgiving." Then I closed my banking app showing my pending transfer, poured myself a glass of cheap wine, and started looking at real estate listings for private estates outside the city. Some secrets are worth keeping, especially when you're planning the perfect moment to reveal them. Becoming wealthy overnight changes everything, and nothing. My bank account transformed, but I kept my same tiny apartment for 6 more months. I still wore my thrift store clothes. I still used coupons at the grocery store. Only Caleb and my financial advisor knew the truth. Most newly rich people make the mistake of showing it off right away, my advisor told me during our first meeting. The smart ones stay quiet and build a foundation. So that's what I did. I set up investment accounts. I created a retirement fund. I made quiet donations to art programs at underfunded schools, and I began looking for land, somewhere private where I could build the home I'd always dreamed of. I found it 3 hours from the city, 50 acres with mountain views, a small lake, and enough privacy that no one would know what I was creating there. The real estate agent's eyes widened when I paid cash, but a simple NDA took care of any gossip. For the next year, I lived 2 lives. In one, I was still struggling artist Hannah, who'd landed a decent job at a tech startup. In the other, I was overseeing construction on a 6,000 square foot modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows, an art studio, and a guest house. Through it all, I kept attending family gatherings where nothing had changed. "Hannah, you should consider corporate work," Mom said during Easter dinner. "Melanie's company has great benefits." "I'm happy where I am," I replied. "Well, happiness doesn't pay the bills," Dad chimed in. "You're not getting any younger, you know." Meanwhile, Melanie detailed her family's spring break trip to the Bahamas, showing photos of her ocean view suite while Mom and Dad cooed appropriately. When my turn came to share news, I mentioned a small industry award I'd won for NeuroSync's branding. "That's nice, dear," Mom said before turning to Melanie. "Now tell us about James's promotion." I smiled through it all, knowing that just yesterday I'd approved the design for my home's infinity pool, the one that would perfectly frame the mountain sunset from my bedroom balcony. The greatest power sometimes lies in what you choose not to reveal. Every time I drove away from their house, a weight lifted. Soon my estate would be finished. Soon I'd have a place where I could truly belong, where I could create a life on my own terms, surrounded by beauty they couldn't comprehend and worth they couldn't dismiss. You know what hurts the most? Not what they did, but that I still tried to make them proud after everything. If you've ever given people too many chances, you already understand this pain. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Join people who've been through it too, because you deserve stories that make you feel seen. Last year's Thanksgiving was the turning point. I'd arrived at my parents' house carrying homemade cranberry sauce and a bottle of expensive wine, though they'd never know it cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. Melanie's family was already there, her husband James holding court in the living room, their children running through the house while my parents beamed with pride. "Hannah, you're late," Mom said, taking my offerings with barely a glance. "Traffic," I explained, though I'd actually been on a call with my interior designer about the hand-carved dining table being made for my new home. Dinner went as expected. James talked about his golf game with the CEO. Melanie shared stories about her children's achievements. Dad discussed his retirement plans. Mom served Melanie first, then James, then the kids, then Dad, and finally me, a hierarchy as clear as it was painful. I mentioned that NeuroSync had been acquired by a larger company, but no one asked for details. Instead, Mom jumped in with news about Melanie's kitchen renovation. Then came the moment. "So, about next year," Mom said, refilling wine glasses, except mine. "Dad and I have been thinking, as we get older, these big gatherings get more tiring." I nodded, not yet realizing what was coming. "We're going to keep Thanksgiving smaller next year, just immediate family. Us, Melanie, James, and the kids." The table went quiet. Everyone looked down at their plates, except Melanie, who smiled sympathetically at me. "That makes sense," I said, my voice steady despite the knife twisting in my chest. "I understand." The conversation moved on, but I'd stopped hearing it. Just immediate family. The words echoed in my head. After 32 years of showing up, of trying to earn my place at this table, I'd been officially cut from the roster. I left early, claiming a headache. No one tried to convince me to stay. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of streetlights and tears I refused to shed. Something had broken inside me, but something else had been born. A clarity I'd never had before. I pulled over at a scenic overlook and called my contractor. "The estate," I said, looking out at the city lights below. "I want it finished by next Thanksgiving, whatever it costs." That night I decided I would never again seek validation from people who couldn't see my worth. I would build my own traditions, create my own family, and when the time was right, they would see exactly what they dismissed. When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone lit up with a message that would change everything. "Mom, we're only having your sister's family this year. It's nothing personal. Hope you understand." I stared at those words for a full 5 minutes. Nothing personal. As if excluding your own daughter from a family holiday could ever be anything but deeply personal. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could type what I really felt. I could finally tell them about my success, my wealth, my new life. I could make them regret every dismissive comment, every comparison, every time they chose Melanie over me. Instead, I typed 6 words. "Of course, Mom. Have a good time." I added a smiley face emoji, the final touch to my mask of indifference. Then I set my phone down, walked to my window, and let out a scream so raw it hurt my throat. They hadn't even called, just a text message, like canceling plans with a casual acquaintance. After 30 minutes of pacing and fighting back tears, I made 2 calls. First, to my estate manager. "Is the house ready for guests?" "The main areas are finished, Ms. Dawson. We still have some landscaping and the east wing to complete, but the kitchen, dining room, living areas, and guest suites are ready." "Good," I said. "I'm hosting Thanksgiving. We need to accelerate everything." The second call was to Alessandro, the private chef I'd hired for special occasions. "I need a Thanksgiving dinner for—" I paused. "How many people?" The answer came instantly. "For as many people as we can fit. I want it to be the most spectacular meal you've ever created." That night, I sat in my apartment, the last night I would spend there before moving to my estate permanently, and made a list. Not of grievances or ways to get back at my family, but of people who had shown me kindness when I had nothing to offer in return. My old art teacher who stayed after school to help me prepare my college portfolio, the barista who sometimes slipped me free coffee during my broke freelancing days, former colleagues who'd believed in my work before anyone else did, neighbors who checked on me when I was sick, friends who drifted away because I was always working to make ends meet, and newer friends from NeuroSync who had no idea about my wealth. As my list grew, so did my excitement. This wouldn't just be a Thanksgiving dinner. It would be a celebration of genuine connection, everything my family had never given me. I fell asleep that night with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Their rejection had accidentally given me the greatest gift, freedom to create something real. I sent the invitations the next morning, a simple text to start. Thanksgiving dinner at my new place, food, music, and no judgment. Bring whoever you love, no gifts, just your presence. For those who responded with shock about my new place, I was vague but warm. I've had some good fortune lately. I'd love to share it with people who matter. The RSVPs started almost immediately. Really? I'd love to come. Can I bring my mom? She's alone this year. Is it okay if I bring my boyfriend? We broke up with both our families this year. I wasn't doing anything but microwave turkey. Count me in. Each message filled me with a strange mix of joy and nervous energy. These people weren't coming because of what I had. They were coming because I'd asked. Because somehow, despite feeling invisible to my own family, I had mattered to others. With my guest list growing beyond 30 people, I dove into preparations. I hired servers, arranged for a live band, ordered flowers for every room. Alessandro created a menu featuring traditional Thanksgiving dishes, alongside global cuisine, representing the diverse backgrounds of my guests. I arranged for car services to pick up guests who needed transportation. For those coming from out of town, the guest house and hotel suites were booked and paid for. My old art teacher called after receiving the invitation, her voice shaking. "Hannah, is this really you? Are you okay, sweetheart? This address is—" "It's me, Mrs. Chen," I said, smiling. "I'm more than okay. I'll explain everything when you get here." The day before Thanksgiving, I stood in the grand entrance of my new home. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased mountain views that still took my breath away. Staff bustled around, arranging furniture, setting up the bar, preparing guest rooms. My phone buzzed with another text, my sister this time. Melanie. "Mom says you're not coming tomorrow. Everything okay?" I looked around at my home, thought of the celebration I was creating, and replied with perfect honesty. "Everything's great. I'm hosting my own Thanksgiving this year." Melanie. "Oh, like with friends. That's nice." I didn't respond. Let her think what she wanted. That artist Hannah was having a sad potluck in her tiny apartment with a few other family rejects. The reality would be so much more beautiful. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and golden. I woke up in my master suite, still not quite believing this was my home. A year ago, I'd been in my cramped apartment, getting ready to face another holiday of subtle put-downs and being the family afterthought. Today, I was the host, the creator of something new. By noon, my home hummed with activity. Alessandro and his team worked magic in the kitchen. Florists arranged last-minute centerpieces. The band set up near the pool area, which was heated and covered with a clear tent for the evening. My first guest arrived at 3, Mrs. Chen, my old art teacher, her eyes wide as the driver helped her from the car. "Hannah," she whispered, clutching her purse as she stared up at the house. "What? How?" I hugged her tight. "Remember when you told me talent always finds its path? You were right." More guests arrived in waves, old friends, new friends, friends of friends who had nowhere else to go. Each face registered the same shock as they entered, followed by a warmth that had nothing to do with my wealth. By 5 o'clock, 57 people filled my home with laughter and conversation. Some knew each other, most didn't. But watching them connect, the barista deep in conversation with a tech executive, my former roommate showing my neighbor's kid how to play piano, filled me with a joy I'd never felt at any family gathering. I wore a simple emerald dress, nothing flashy. I wanted people to feel comfortable, not intimidated. As I moved through rooms, making introductions, topping off glasses, I caught glimpses of myself in mirrors and windows. I looked happy, genuinely happy. At 6, we gathered in the dining hall. 3 long tables formed a U shape covered in ivory linens, candles, and fresh flowers. Place cards were arranged so everyone would meet someone new. I stepped to the head of the table, glass in hand. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion rising in my chest. Most of you are wondering how this happened, why I invited you, and when exactly I won the lottery. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. The truth is simpler. Each of you saw me, really saw me, when others didn't. You valued my art, my friendship, my coffee order, my presence. That's worth celebrating. I raised my glass. So today, we celebrate chosen family, the connections that heal us, the people who make us visible. 57 glasses rose in response. In that moment, I knew I'd created something my parents and sister could never understand. Genuine belonging. When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. I didn't think about social media until halfway through dinner. My friend Tasha, a photographer I'd met during my freelancing days, had been snapping pictures all evening. The glowing pool at sunset, tables laden with food, guests laughing with raised glasses. "These are gorgeous," she said, showing me her camera roll. "Mind if I post a few? This place is unreal." "Go ahead," I said without thinking. "Tag whoever you want." 2 hours later, as we moved to the pool area for dessert and dancing, I'd forgotten all about it. The band played soft jazz. Staff circulated with coffee and dessert trays. The night air was cool but comfortable under the heated tent. Mrs. Chen found me by the fire pit, her eyes misty. "I always knew you were special," she said, squeezing my hand. "But this is extraordinary." "Not the house, though it's magnificent, but what you've created tonight. All these different people together." I was about to respond when my phone started buzzing in my clutch. Then it buzzed again, and again. I ignored it until the 4th consecutive buzz made me curious. Excusing myself, I stepped away to check. 4 text notifications lit up my screen. Melanie. "Wow, nice house. Since when do you live there?" Mom. "Why didn't you tell us you moved? Is this your place?" Dad. "We didn't mean to leave you out this year. You know how things get." Melanie again. "Are you suddenly rich or something? James says that view is from the Westridge Mountains. Those properties cost millions." I stared at my phone, a strange calm settling over me. Tasha's photos must have made their way through mutual connections. The family that hadn't wanted me at their table was now suddenly very interested in mine. For a moment I considered responding, explaining everything, inviting them over, finally revealing the success I'd kept hidden. But across the pool I saw my guests dancing, laughing, connecting. People who had shown up not because of what I had, but because of who I was. I slipped my phone back into my clutch without replying. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them wait. I rejoined the party, accepting a glass of champagne from a server. "Everything okay?" Tasha asked, noticing my expression. I smiled, looking around at the beautiful chaos of my chosen family. "Everything is perfect," I said, and meant it. For the first time in my life, I didn't need my family's approval. I didn't need to explain myself or prove my worth. I was finally completely free. My phone stayed silent for 3 whole days after Thanksgiving. I knew they were talking about me, deciding on their approach, calculating how to respond to the bombshell they never saw coming. On the 4th day, my sister called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hannah, it's so good to hear your voice," Melanie said, her tone dripping with newfound sweetness. "Hi, Mel," I replied simply. "So, your house looks amazing. Why didn't you tell us? We would have loved to see it." I walked onto my balcony, watching the mountains in the distance. "Would you have believed me if I told you?" A pause. "Of course we would. We're family." "Are we? Because last I checked, I wasn't family enough for Thanksgiving dinner." Another pause, longer this time. "That was just Mom being Mom. You know how she gets with planning." Her voice brightened artificially. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. We were thinking next year we could all do Thanksgiving at your place. Wouldn't that be wonderful? The whole family together in your beautiful home?" The audacity almost made me laugh. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't worth a seat at their table. Now they wanted to claim mine. "I'm afraid that won't work," I said calmly. "I already have plans for next Thanksgiving." "Plans? But it's a year away." "My new tradition, you understand." Mom called next, her voice strained with forced casualness. "Hannah, sweetie, we've missed you. Why don't you come over for Christmas Eve? We want to hear all about your new situation." Dad tried too, asking if I'd help with their retirement planning since I was apparently good with money now. The invitations kept coming. Melanie's son's birthday party. "It's at the country club, my cousin's wedding. We got you a +1. Family reunion. Great Aunt Edith would love to see you." Events I'd never been invited to before suddenly had my name at the top of the guest list. I declined each one politely but firmly. No anger, no explanations, just simple boundaries they couldn't cross. "I have prior commitments. I'll be traveling that weekend. Thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to attend." They'd always seen me as the family option, someone to include when convenient, ignore when not. Now I was showing them that I had options too, and they weren't one of them. 6 months after Thanksgiving, my father called at 6:30 in the morning. My heart jumped. Early calls usually meant emergencies. "Dad, is everything okay?" His voice came through strained and nervous. "Hannah, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about your sister." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "Is Melanie hurt?" No, nothing like that." He paused. "It's financial. James made some investments that didn't pan out. They're in trouble, Hannah. Serious trouble." The story came out in bits and pieces. James had taken their savings and second mortgage and put everything into a risky real estate venture. The deal collapsed. They owed nearly $500,000 to investors and banks. "They might lose the house," Dad continued. "The kids would have to change schools. Melanie's devastated." I stayed silent, letting him fill the space. "Hannah, I wouldn't ask if we had any other options. Your mother and I have already given them what we can, but it's not enough." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "You've done so well for yourself. Is there any way you could help your sister out?" The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Melanie had been held up as my blueprint for success. Now her life was collapsing while mine flourished. "Let me understand," I said carefully. You're asking me to bail out Melanie and James? Just a loan, Dad rushed to clarify. They'll pay you back, of course. I thought about all the family dinners where they dismissed my career, the Thanksgiving. I wasn't family enough to attend. The years of being the lesser daughter. Part of me, a small hurt part, wanted to say no. To let them face the consequences of James's recklessness. To finally let Melanie know how it felt to struggle. But another part remembered the handmade birthday cards she'd given me when we were kids. How she'd stood up for me against bullies in middle school. The person she'd been before our parents' favoritism twisted our relationship. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I ask, Dad replied, relief evident in his voice. Thank you, Hannah. After we hung up, I sat in my garden watching the sun rise. The easy path would be revenge, letting them suffer as I had. The harder path was compassion without becoming a doormat. I needed to decide which path would bring me peace. For 3 days, I wrestled with my father's request. I walked the grounds of my estate, remembering every slight, every dismissal, every time I was made to feel less than. The Christmas, I got practical clothes while Melanie got jewelry. The high school art show my parents skipped because Melanie had a volleyball game the same night. The constant refrain, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" On the 4th day, I called Caleb. I need perspective, I told him, explaining the situation. He listened quietly before asking, "What does winning look like to you, Hannah?" Winning? In this situation, if you help them, you lose. If you don't help them, you lose. So what does winning actually look like? I thought about it. Peace, I finally said. I want peace, and I want them to see me, really see me. Then create a solution that gives you both, he said simply. That night, I emailed my family. I'll meet with all of you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at my home to discuss Melanie's situation. They arrived 15 minutes early, all 4 of them, Mom, Dad, Melanie, and James. Their eyes darted around my entrance hall, taking in the artwork, the vaulted ceilings, the views. I led them to my office, not the formal living room. This wasn't a social visit. I've considered your request, I said once we were all seated. I'm willing to help, but with conditions. James started to object, but Melanie squeezed his arm. First, I'll pay off your debts, all of them. Second, I'll establish a college fund for your children that only they can access. Third, James will work with my financial advisor to create a responsible budget. I paused, looking at each of them. In exchange, I want honesty, real relationships. No more pretending I don't exist until you need something. Dad nodded eagerly. Mom looked at her hands. Melanie had tears in her eyes. And one more thing, I added. I want you to understand why I kept my success a secret. Why I didn't tell you when I became wealthy. Why I spent years letting you think I was struggling. I took a deep breath. I need you to hear how it felt to be the family afterthought. And for the first time in my life, they listened. 2 weeks after our agreement, Mom collapsed at the grocery store. The doctor's words hit like hammer blows. Advanced pancreatic cancer, spread to the liver, 3 months, maybe less. All our recent history, the slights, the rejection, my newfound wealth, suddenly seemed small against the looming shadow of loss. I hired the best oncologists, arranged for home health care, converted my guest house into a comfortable space for my parents. The months of boundaries I'd carefully constructed crumbled in the face of my mother's mortality. One evening, sitting beside her bed while she dozed, I noticed how thin her hands had become. The same hands that had brushed my hair as a child, the same hands that had later pushed me away. She stirred, eyes finding mine. Hannah? I'm here, Mom. I need to tell you something. Her voice was papery, fragile. I was wrong about you. Always wrong. I tried to shush her, to save her strength, but she shook her head. No, listen. Your father and we pushed Melanie because she needed it. She wasn't like you, confident, talented. She needed our help to succeed. I stared at her, processing this reframing of our entire childhood. You were so strong, so sure of yourself. We thought you'd be fine no matter what. We were wrong. Tears slipped down her hollow cheeks. We failed you. 3 weeks later, she was gone. After the funeral, as we sorted through her belongings, Dad handed me an envelope. She asked me to give you this. Inside was a handwritten letter. Hannah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know I failed you in many ways. Your sister needed us, but so did you. And I didn't see it until too late. You have something she doesn't. Heart. Use it well. I saw the woman you became despite us, not because of us. I'm so proud of you. Love, Mom. I pressed the letter to my chest, finally crying the tears I'd held back for years. Sometimes forgiveness comes too late for reconciliation, but just in time for peace. Sometimes understanding doesn't erase the pain, but it helps you carry it differently. And sometimes the greatest revenge is finding happiness they never thought you deserved. 1 year after my mother's death, I sent out invitations for my 3rd annual Thanksgiving celebration. The guest list had grown to over 100 people. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, and strangers who needed a place to belong. But this year, there were 4 new names at the bottom of the list: Dad, Melanie, James, and their children. They'd earned their places back slowly, through genuine apologies, through changed behavior, through seeing me as I am, not who they wanted me to be. As guests arrived, I watched my niece and nephew race around the yard with other children. Dad helped Alessandro in the kitchen, his retirement giving him time to rediscover his love of cooking. Melanie greeted my friends with genuine warmth, no longer comparing or competing. Before dinner, we gathered in a circle on the lawn. The tradition I'd started 2 years ago was for each person to share something they were grateful for. When my turn came, I looked around at these faces, some new, some familiar, some related by blood, most by choice. I'm grateful for second chances, I said, for the family we're born into and the family we create, for learning that sometimes the people who hurt us most can also heal us if we let them. Dad squeezed my hand. Melanie wiped a tear. As we moved toward the tables, Mrs. Chen pulled me aside. You've built something beautiful here, Hannah, not just this home, but this community. I looked around at my guests, this tapestry of lives now connected because I'd once been excluded from a table. Sometimes rejection is just redirection to where you truly belong. Sometimes revenge isn't about payback, it's about peace. And if this story touched you, subscribe right now. Because somewhere out there, another person is watching in silence, needing a reminder that they're not alone, and your one click might help them find it.